Hello, and welcome back, everybody, to Chasing Masculinity, the podcast where we explore what it means to live as men with purpose, integrity, and a strong foundation in faith. I'm your host, Colton Wutzke, and I'm excited to dive into another rule from my 24 rules of masculinity that I'm working on embracing in my own life. Today's topic is going to challenge a concept that has become so prevalent in modern society, the idea of the alpha male. So what exactly is an alpha male? The concept has made its way into modern culture as a term to describe dominant, assertive, and confident men who supposedly sit at the top of the social hierarchy. But the truth is, the whole alpha/beta male mentality is a relatively modern social construct, and the more we buy into it, the more we restrict ourselves with flawed and shallow definitions of what it means to be a man. In today's episode, we're going to break free from that restrictive and harmful idea. We'll dig into where this alpha male idea comes from, why it's gained so much traction, and most importantly, why rejecting it is vital if you want to live out true masculinity in your life. This journey isn't about playing by social rules that tell you who you should be. It's about embracing who God has called you to be as a man, grounded in service, faith, and integrity. To set the tone for today's discussion, I want to start with a Bible verse that I think perfectly reflects the importance of trusting in God's guidance over your own force or power. This comes from Numbers 20:12, where God said to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not trust in me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I give them." It's a powerful reminder that when we rely on our own strength and control rather than trusting in God's plan, we're bound to fall short. And that's exactly what happens when we pour out our faith in this outdated idea of an alpha male. It's based on force, power, and dominance rather than the true traits of manhood like humility, wisdom, and service. So stick with me, because by the end of this episode, we're going to have a whole new understanding of what true masculinity looks like. And it's not about being an alpha. It's about being a man of integrity, strength in character, and faith. Now that we've set the stage, let's dive into where this whole concept of the alpha male actually comes from. You might think it's been around for quite some time, but the truth is, it's a fairly modern idea, and one that's not even based on human behavior originally. The term alpha male comes from studies on animal behavior, specifically within wolf packs. Early researchers observed that one wolf, typically the strongest or most assertive, would dominate the others. From that, they coined the idea of an alpha wolf. But, here's the catch, even in the animal world, the concept was later debunked. More recent studies have shown that wolf packs actually function more like families, with cooperation and mutual respect being more important than domination. So, right from the start, this idea of the alpha male leading by force was flawed. But despite the scientific inaccuracies, the alpha male concept took off, especially in human social structures. Why? Well, when something sounds simple and promises a shortcut to success or to power, people tend to grab onto it, and that's exactly what happened. As this concept started to get popular, particularly through media and the rise of internet influencers, young men began to see it as a model to how to succeed in life. Let's be honest, men are looking for guidance. In a world that feels increasingly confusing, young men are searching for ways to reclaim a sense of strength, purpose, and masculinity. And here comes this alpha male mentality offering what seems to be like a solution: dominance, control, and assertiveness. It's easy to see why it caught on so fast. Influencers pushing this idea often portray themselves as successful and powerful, leading others to think, if I act like that, I'll have what they have. And this is where it gets dangerous. The alpha male mentality offers a surface-level imitation of manhood, but it ultimately fails those who try to live by it. Think about it. When you're told to be dominant in all situations, to always be the one in control, that leaves no room for vulnerability, humility, or growth. You end up with men who are more focused on posturing and asserting powers rather than building competence, serving others, or living with actual integrity. This mindset leads to toxic behaviors. It teaches men that success comes from overpowering others, that emotions are weaknesses, and that relationships are about control. It tells them that real men never ask for help, never admit to failure, and never show anything but confidence. We know from experience that's not sustainable. It's exhausting, it's damaging, and it's not how men are designed to live. What's worse is the alpha male mentality strips away the true joys of manhood, the fulfillment that comes from leading with duty and responsibility, the satisfaction of growing in competence through hard work and dedication, the joy of serving others and being a reliable, trustworthy member of your family and community. These are the things that make you a real man, not the ability to dominate every room you walk into. And that's the big lie of the alpha male mentality. It promises strength and success, but leaves men feeling isolated, insecure, and always chasing some unattainable version of masculinity. It's time we reject this flawed narrative and embrace a fuller, richer understanding of what it means to be a man. So how do we do that? How do we let go of this idea and build something better? Now that we've unpacked the rise of the alpha male mentality, let's talk about why chasing this idea ultimately sets men up for failure, not success or fulfillment. The alpha male narrative is built on the idea that dominance and power are the ultimate markers of success. It says that the more you assert yourself over others, the more you can control your environment, the more of a man you are. But here's the problem with that. When your identity is based on the dominance and power, you're always one step away from losing it. Power is fleeting. You can be on top one day, and the next day, someone stronger, faster, more assertive can easily take your place. Where does that leave you? A constant chase. You're always trying to stay on top, always in fear of losing that control. That's not strength. That's an insecurity. Dr. Jordan B. Peterson captures this flaw by stating, well, what seemed to happen, or what happened as far as I can tell, is the idea of economic conflict was replaced by the idea of power as the most important element of an individual. Not their individual identity, but the group that they belong to, the racial group, the ethnic group, the gender, the sex, some element of group identity where the world is best construed as a battle for power between these different groups. I believe that idea is absolutely preposterous. Not only is it wrong that social institutions are essentially predicated on power, so that if you are striving for power, you are more likely to succeed in a given functional social institution. Not only is it wrong that the social institutions are essentially predicated on power, so that if you are striving for power, you are more likely to succeed in a given functional institution. I don't believe that there's any evidence that that's the case, and plenty of evidence on the contrary, because the arbitrary expression of power is actually not a very effective means of attaining status and authority. It's certainly a terrible means of attaining competence. The truth is, real masculinity isn't about dominance. It's not about power. It's about competence. It's about integrity. It's about building meaningful relationships and contributing to the people around you. If you're constantly focused on winning power struggles, you miss the opportunity to grow in ways that actually matter. There was a time in my life when I bought into the whole alpha male mentality. I thought that if I could just be more confident, more assertive, and more in control, then I'd have it all figured out. But the more I chased, the more disconnected I felt, not just from myself, but from others, and from what really mattered. I was putting on this mask of dominance, but underneath, I felt lost. The relationships I had were surface level because I wasn't showing up as my true self. I was chasing this image, this idea that being an alpha would solve all of my problems, but instead, it led me further away from my real fulfillment. And I know I'm not alone in saying that. I've spoken to so many men who have gone down the same road, trying to fit themselves into this alpha mold and finding nothing but emptiness. They've spent years building their identity around being in charge or on top, only to realize that it's not sustainable, and worse, it's not who they truly were. So what does bring real fulfillment? Let me tell you, it's competence. It's being skilled, knowledgeable, and capable in the areas that matter to you. It's about having integrity, doing what's right even when no one is watching. It's investing in meaningful relationships where you can be vulnerable, supportive, and truly connected. These are the real foundations of masculinity, not how many people you can control or how much dominance you can project. When you focus on these things, competence, integrity, and relationships, you're not living in fear of losing power. You're building something lasting, something real. You're growing as a person, and that growth isn't dependent on anyone else's approval or validation. It's internal. And when you do that, when you live with integrity, when you invest in your own growth, you start to experience true fulfillment. Now, I want to engage with you specifically for a moment. Think about your own life. How has pursuing these alpha male traits affected you? Have you ever felt disconnected or unfulfilled like I did? Maybe you were chasing a sense of power or control only to realize that it wasn't bringing you the satisfaction that you thought it would. How did this impact your relationships, your sense of self-worth, your direction in life? I challenge you to reflect on moments where you've sought power or dominance and felt like it took away from your true values. What did you learn from those moments? And, more importantly, what can you change moving forward to focus on what truly matters, your competence, your integrity, and the relationships around you? Take some time this week to really think about that. Journal about it, talk to a friend about it, or just reflect quietly. This shift away from the alpha male mentality is an important one, and it starts with awareness. Once you see the fallacy of chasing power, you can begin to build a life that's rooted in real masculinity, in real fulfillment. Now that we've debunked the myth of the alpha male's path to success, let's dive into something even more powerful: God's commands about force and power. Specifically, I want to take you to a story in the Bible that vividly illustrates the dangers of relying on brute strength rather than faith and obedience to God's plan. This story is found in Numbers 20, 7 through 12, and it's about Moses, one of the most revered leaders in the Bible, who let his reliance on force cost him dearly. Here's the scene. The Israelites were in the wilderness, and they were complaining, again, about not having water. God gives Moses a very clear instruction: speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will pour out its water. It's a simple, direct command. But what does Moses do? In his frustration and impatience, he strikes the rock twice with his staff instead of speaking to it as God instructed. The water does flow, but God is displeased with Moses' disobedience. He says, "Because you did not trust in me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I give them." Moses, the man who led the Israelites out of Egypt, who performed miracles of God's power, is told that he will not be able to enter the Israelites' promised land. Why? Because he relied on his own force, his own power, instead of trusting in God's wisdom and following his command. This isn't just a moment of anger. It was a moment where Moses chose his own strength over God's plan, and that's why it was such a costly mistake. This story teaches us a powerful lesson. God does not want us to rely on brute strength, force, or control. He wants us to trust in his wisdom, to act out of obedience, humility, and love. The consequences for Moses were severe, and that shows us just how important it is to follow God's way. Even if it doesn't seem logical or when we're feeling frustrated and want to take matters into our own hands. How does that apply to the alpha male mentality? The alpha male ideology glorifies dominance, force, and control. It says to be a man, you have to assert your will over others, that you have to lead with brute strength. But as we see in Moses' story, that's not what God desires for us as men. He doesn't want us to rely on force. He wants us to rely on faith. He wants us to act in obedience, to trust his plan, and to lead with humility and service, not with dominance. The alpha male mindset is a trap because it tells us that force is the way to gain respect and authority. But in reality, that mindset leads to downfall. Just like Moses striking the rock, relying on your own power will only take you so far, and eventually it will lead to consequences. It may lead to broken relationships, unfulfilled goals, and most importantly, a lack of alignment with God's will for your life. God's commands about force and power are clear. He wants us to lead with faith, not with our fists. He wants us to trust in him, not in our own strength. And the world may tell you that being a man means asserting control, but God tells us that being a man means surrendering to his plan and living with a spirit of service and obedience. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. Where are you relying on your own force and power to get things done? Maybe it's in your work, where you feel like you need to dominate every situation to be successful. Maybe it's in your relationships, where you've tried to control others to feel more secure. Or maybe it's in your personal life, where you've pushed your own will instead of surrendering to God's directions. All of these are examples that I have experienced and suffered the consequences to in my own life. Whatever it is, I want to challenge you to let go of that need for control. Surrender it to God. Ask him to guide your steps, to give you the strength to act in faith and obedience, not out of force. When you do that, you'll find that you don't need to rely on the flawed alpha mentality. Instead, you'll be living in alignment with God's will, and that's where true strength and fulfillment lie. Now that we've unpacked the dangers and downfalls of the alpha male mindset, let's talk about something far more powerful, the true path to masculinity. What does it really mean to be a man in today's world, especially as a man of faith? How do we reject the flawed ideas of dominance and control, and instead embrace masculinity in a way that brings meaning, fulfillment, and aligns with God's purpose? Let's start with this. True masculinity is not about proving your strength by overpowering others. It's about building yourself up through competence, responsibility, service, and integrity. And unlike the alpha male concept, these principles aren't about elevating yourself above others. They're about leading with humility and living with purpose. Today, we're going to dive into 4 key steps that can help you embrace true masculinity and live a life rooted in faith and responsibility. The first is to cultivate competence and skills that contribute to your community. The first step on this path is to focus on competence. Now, what do I mean by competence? It's the idea of being proficient and capable in whatever role God has placed in your life. This could be your career, your relationships, your personal growth, or all of the above. Competence doesn't mean being the loudest and most assertive in the room. It means being good at what you do, consistently working to improve, and using those skills to make a positive impact on your community, whatever that community may look like. In today's world, men are often told that power and dominance are the ultimate goals, but true masculinity comes from being skilled and knowledgeable. When you're competent, people respect you not because you assert your authority, but because you're reliable and effective in whatever you take on. And there is authority in that. Whether you're a carpenter, a teacher, a lawyer, or a father, mastering your craft and being someone people can count on is a foundation of true manhood. Ask yourself, what skills can I develop that will serve both myself and my community? Maybe it's learning a new trade, deepening your expertise at work, or even improving your communication skills in your relationships. Whatever it is, focus on becoming competent, not for personal glory, but to serve others around you. The second is to embrace responsibility in your personal and professional life. This step is all about responsibility. Now, this is huge. In a culture that sometimes glorifies avoiding commitment and shirking responsibilities, true masculinity calls us to own our lives, both the successes and the failures. Whether it's in your family, your job, or your friendships, embracing responsibility is one of the most powerful things you can do as a man. Responsibility means taking ownership of your actions and understanding that everything you do affects not just you, but those around you. If you want to lead, whether it's in your home or your career, people need to see that you're reliable and willing to bear the weight of the consequences that come with decisions. We see this clearly in the Bible. In Timothy 5:8, it says, "Anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for those in their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever." This verse speaks to the heart of responsibility. It's not just about providing financially, but emotionally, spiritually, and physically for those who depend on you. Where in your life can you embrace more responsibility? Is there a relationship you've been neglecting, a task you've been putting off, or a commitment you've avoided? These are all areas that will truly shape your character and build your masculinity. Responsibility is not a burden. It is a gift that allows you to step into the fullness of who God has called you to be. The third is about serving others and building meaningful relationships. The most overlooked aspects of masculinity is the idea of serving others. Our culture often teaches that manhood is about getting what you want, being self-sufficient, and looking out for number one. But that's not what God has in mind for us. Jesus is the perfect example of what it means to lead through service. In Mark 10:45, Jesus says, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." Think about that. The Savior of the world showed us that true greatness comes from serving others. Serving others doesn't diminish your strength, it magnifies it. When you choose to put others first, to sacrifice your time, energy, or resources for someone else, you're not only strengthening your character, but also deepening your relationships. It's through service that you will build meaningful connections with others, whether that's your family, your friends, or your community. So I want to challenge you. How can you serve this week? Can you volunteer at your church, offer to help a neighbor, or even be there for a friend who's going through a tough time? Start small, but be consistent. True masculinity is about service, not self-interest. The fourth is live with integrity and pursue personal growth. Let's talk about integrity and personal growth. Integrity means living in a way that is consistent with your values, even when no one's watching. It means doing the right thing because it's the right thing, not because you're seeking approval or recognition. Proverbs 10:9 says, "Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out." In a world that often rewards shortcuts, staying true to your principles can be difficult. But this is where true masculinity shines. When you choose honesty, kindness, and humility over quick wins or empty successes, you will live with integrity. You earn the trust and respect of those around you, and that's far more valuable than any fleeting recognition. In addition to living with integrity, we must also commit to personal growth. As men, we should never stop learning, never stop growing, and never stop challenging ourselves to be better. Whether it's through reading, prayer, mentorship, or pursuing new opportunities, growing in faith and character should be a consistent part of our journey. So let me ask you, where can you apply these traits in your life? What steps can you take this week to focus on competence, integrity, and service instead of power and dominance? Maybe it's taking responsibility for something you've been avoiding. Maybe it's stepping up in your community and serving others. Or maybe it's choosing to live with integrity in a situation where it could be easier to cut corners. Whatever it is, commit to making those changes this week. I challenge you to write down one action you can take in each of these areas: competence, responsibility, service, and integrity, and put it into practice over the next 7 days. It's not about being perfect. It's about making progress and living out true masculinity day by day. Now that we've discussed rejecting the alpha male mindset and embracing true masculinity through competence, responsibility, service, and integrity, let's talk about one of the most important aspects of this journey: surrounding yourself with the right role models and mentors. It's been said that we are the sum of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And when it comes to growing as a man, who you choose to look up to and who you surround yourself with is critical. If you want to embody true masculinity, you need to seek out role models and mentors who live it out, not just through their words, but through their actions. In today's world, there's no shortage of people who call themselves leaders or influencers, but real leaders are men who lead through action, through their character, and through their faith. These are the men who day in and day out make decisions based on their values and not on their desire to appear strong or powerful. They understand that true masculinity is not about commanding attention or seeking dominance, but about living with humility, integrity, and a sense of duty to those around them. Finding the right role models is essential because they help set the tone for how you see yourself as a man. They inspire you to live with purpose and integrity. They show you what it means to be strong, not just in the body, but in spirit and character. They push you to grow in areas you might otherwise overlook. When you're looking for role models and mentors, there are certain key traits to look for. These are men that should embody Christian masculinity, the kind of masculinity that's based on service, humility, and faithfulness. Let's break that down a bit. Humility. A true role model isn't someone who's always boasting about his accomplishments or trying to prove that he's the best. Instead, he's humble. He's a man who understands that his strength comes from God and that it's not about lifting himself up, but about lifting others up. Look for men who are quick to listen, slow to speak, and who are always ready to give credit to others, even where they've been doing heavy lifting. This is one that I probably struggle with the most. The next, service. The right role models aren't interested in power for the sake of power. They're focused on service, serving their families and serving their communities. These are men who live out the command in Mark 10:45, where Jesus says, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve." Look for men who are generous with their time, who go out of their way to help others, and who see their roles in life as servants first and foremost. The next is integrity. One of the most important qualities of a true role model is integrity. This means being the same person in public as you are in private. It means making decisions based on your moral principles even when no one's watching. A man of integrity doesn't take shortcuts, and he doesn't compromise his values for the sake of convenience or approval. He stands firm in his faith and lives a life that reflects faith in all areas, whether it's his work, his relationships, or as personal habits. The last is strength through action. You have to look for men who demonstrate strength not by dominating others, but by taking action in ways that build up those around them. These men are leaders, not because they demand respect, but because they earn it through their actions. They protect and provide, not through force or control, but through their dedication to doing what's right. They take responsibility for their families, their communities, and their spiritual growth, and they lead others by that example. Once you've identified the traits that you're looking for, the next step is to seek out the mentors who can guide you on this journey towards true masculinity. Mentorship is one of the most powerful tools for growth. A mentor is somebody who's been where you are and can offer wisdom, perspective, and accountability. They can help steer you away from the temptations of the alpha male ideology and towards a life of faith, service, and humility. So where do you find these mentors? You could start at your local church. There are likely older men in your congregation who have lived through the struggles you're facing and have come out stronger on the other side. These are the men you want to learn from, the ones who have built strong families, maintained their integrity in their careers, and stayed committed to their faith even when it was tough. You can also look for mentorship in your community or workplace. Seek out men who have a reputation for living with integrity and who are respected not just for their success, but for the way they treat others. These are the men who can offer valuable insight into what it means to be a man of character and faith. The alpha male mindset is all about taking power, taking control, taking advantage. But true masculinity, as we've discussed, is about giving your time, giving your strength, and your love to those around you. This is where mentors can play a crucial role. They can help guide you away from the toxic influences that tell you masculinity is about dominance and power, and instead lead you towards a life of service, competence, and faith. Ask yourself, who in my life exemplifies these traits? Who are the men that I admire, not just for what they've accomplished, but for how they've done it? Who can I learn from, and who can help me grow in my faith and my role as a man? These are the men you need to be surrounding yourself with. So who are your role models? Are they living out the kind of masculinity that aligns with God's will? Or are they chasing the false ideals of power and control that come with the alpha male mentality? If you don't have a mentor yet, I encourage you to start looking. Reach out to somebody you admire, ask them for guidance, and be willing to learn from their experiences. Mentorship isn't about finding the perfect someone. It's about finding someone who's committed to growing in the same direction you are. And if you're not sure where to start, pray about it. Ask God to bring the right people into your life, men who can help guide you towards true masculinity, rooted in faith, service, and integrity. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to take a moment to reflect on the power-based traits that the alpha male mindset promotes and how we can move away from them. This application section is all about personal growth and recognizing the areas in our lives where we've been influenced by this harmful ideology and how we can change that starting right now. Let's start with a few reflection questions to get us thinking. Think about how you interact with others at work, in your relationships, or in your social circles. Are you prioritizing dominance, control, or power over other people? Maybe you've been focused on trying to appear strong, assertive, or invulnerable because that's what society tells us a man should be. Recognize those traits and how they've affected your decisions and relationships. How can you shift your focus to traits that foster true masculinity like service, humility, and competence? This is where the real strength comes from. Instead of looking to be dominant, start looking for ways you can serve others. Instead of seeking control, ask yourself how you can grow in humility. And instead of relying on a false sense of superiority, focus on becoming competent, building skills, integrity, and responsibility that will genuinely make you a better man. Think of these shifts as retaining your mindset and heart to value what really matters. How can you begin to apply those positive attributes in your life this week? Now, it's time to get practical. Start with something small but meaningful. How can you serve someone else this week? How can you show humility in a situation where you might normally try to prove yourself? Take responsibility in areas in your life where you've been cutting corners. Maybe that means owning up to a mistake at work or putting in a little extra effort to help a friend or family member. The key is to take action and to start applying these principles in your everyday life. I want to challenge you to write down 3 to 5 positive attributes that you want to develop in yourself. These could be traits like service, integrity, humility, or competence. Take some time to reflect on what you want to see in yourself and how you can begin to live out those values. Start by implementing those attributes through small acts of service, by owning your responsibilities and taking leadership with integrity in every decision you make. It's not about being perfect, it's about taking the first step towards true manhood, one action at a time. I encourage you to think deeply about these questions and this challenge throughout the week. It's easy to fall back into old habits, but true change happens when we are intentional and pursue growth. This week, make it a goal to focus on developing the traits that embody real masculinity and leave behind this alpha male mindset for good. As we come to the end of today's episode, let's recap those key takeaways. We've explored how the alpha male concept, so glorified in our culture, is actually flawed and harmful ideology. It promotes a distorted view of masculinity, one rooted in power and dominance instead of what truly defines manhood. Real masculinity isn't about being in control or being the top dog. It's about faith, service, integrity, and competence. Rejecting the alpha male mentality isn't easy, and it's something I'm working on every day myself. It's easy to get caught up in the pressure society puts on men to conform to a narrow version of masculinity. But I'm on this journey too, learning to break free from these unhealthy expectations and instead focus on becoming the man God calls us to be. I invite you to join me on that journey. Let's strive together to embrace true masculinity, one that is centered around faith, serving others, and being men of integrity. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. How has the alpha male mentality impacted your life? And how do you see yourself growing as you reject that mindset and focus on what really matters? Reach out, leave a comment, or share your reflections on social media. Let's keep this conversation going. Also, take some time this week to reflect on the areas that you want to grow in. Are there habits or traits that you need to leave behind? How can you start showing more humility and service in your life? Remember, it's a process. We're not aiming for perfection, just progress. I want to leave you with this final word of encouragement from Proverbs 16:9. In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. No matter where you are on your journey of chasing true masculinity, trust that God is guiding your steps. Keep working on yourself, keep growing, and keep chasing. Thanks for joining me today on Chasing Masculinity. If you like this episode, please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Your support really helps spread the content, so make sure to leave a like. It makes a big difference and helps more people find the podcast. Also, don't forget to share this podcast with your friends, family, or anyone you think could benefit from these discussions. Let's build a community of men who are dedicated to personal growth, faith, and becoming the best versions of ourselves. You can also connect with me on social media. Follow me on X and Instagram at Mr. Wutzke, where I share more insights, reflections, and updates. Feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear your thoughts or answer any questions. Thanks again for joining me today on Chasing Masculinity. Until next time, keep chasing.